Hey everyone, my name is Mike Andes. I'm the founder of Augusta Lawn Care. We have over 150 locations around the world. And today is actually going to be a coaching call that I had with a landscaper doing about $1.2 million in annual revenue. His highest performing employees are leaving because he can't pay them enough. Right now, he ranges between about $15 per hour and $19 per hour for his employees.
I am losing the best of my employees, all of them. Like, I don't want to pay them 35.
Someone that's making $15 an hour versus someone who's making $19 an hour, the guy making $19 an hour might actually be making twice as much profit for the business, but he's only making $4 more per hour. And so in this case, this is when pay for performance is super important. That's where we pay the employee based upon how much revenue they bring in for the business. So today is actually a coaching call for about 30 or 40 minutes, and you can actually get one of these coaching calls yourself. If you just go to p4psoftware.com, you can book a call with our sales team, and someone from the sales team will be able to speak to you about whether or not pay for performance is right for your business. Without any further delay, let's talk to John from Vine Landscaping, building a big business and making sure you can actually switch over to P4P instead of hourly wages.
Mike Andes is on the call.
Hey, Chad, how's it going, dude?
My wife was like, yo, you're gonna have a call with Mike Andes? I was like, no, honey, I'm gonna have a call with his team.
Well, Lael's new to the team, and so she's gonna be like along kind of for the ride for support. But
Yep.
I'll do the whole call with you. So anything I can
Cool.
help with, let's jump into it.
Dude, I am so blessed to get you. I know I got 15 minutes of your time, and I'm obviously gonna use it wisely. My whole business model is based off of yours, by the way. The entire thing from up left to right, front to back. So here we're at P4P, and I am losing the best of my employees, all of them, and it is crushing me. But I don't know what mathematically and for the books what this is going to do. Like, I can't give 33%, just can't do it. For landscaping, I can probably get 18.9. For mowing, I can probably do 25. But I need to know like what that's going to look like on my books. And that's really the only question I really have. I once demoed this last year. I did bonus up last year a lot. I think I demoed this very briefly, but I just need to know like what this is going to do to the books and how to roll this out.
Yep.
Um, like I think it just comes down to the math.
Yep.
Is this
What you
18 and 20? Go ahead.
right? What was your revenue like last year, for example, John?
819. Yeah, 819 for last year. Yep.
Okay, and then do you happen to have your P&L in front of you or not?
Sure, I can share my screen.
Or even if I could just know how much your total wages were, and if you
Yep.
know direct versus indirect, that'd be great. But even just total wages would be fine.
By indirect, you mean so the cost of goods sold, everything, materials, subs minus
So
wages.
if you even just know total wages, that'd be a helpful number for me for now.
Yep. So I got total wages minus taxes, total wages at 153,940.99.
Okay. And
Oh,
then
sorry, disregard.
okay.
That is for this year. Let me get the 2013 numbers. I'm sorry, 2023, Jan 1.
Because I was gonna say that was pretty phenomenal.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, total tech wages is 236, 748.52.
Okay. And then what was your material cost? Do you know have that itemized out? Just like total
So
materials?
we're at 49,000 for landscaping, customer damages, repairs, chemicals. So we're about 8,076. So we're about 57,140 for just materials for both lawn care and landscaping.
Got it. Okay, cool. So on the 236,000 in wages, does that include office or admin or any sort of other overhead expense or just all direct? So you're the only overhead in the business, I'm assuming.
Negative. It's me, my production manager, my admin last year.
Got it. And you're not including those wages in the 236. Got it. So just to be clear, right now you're paying 29% of revenue to direct wages. Now, when we say 33%, for example, on P4P, that is of labor revenue only, which means you got to cut out all materials, you got to cut all any sort of estimate fees, dump fees, equipment fees, anything like that. And so I would actually venture to believe you're paying about 35 to 40% of labor revenue to employees right now.
Sure.
So that would be my first thing is like uh I actually think you're gonna fit inside the system fine from a numbers perspective.
Sure.
It's just scary to think that, oh, I'm gonna give 33% away because 33% of 819 is an extra 30, 40 grand compared to last year. But it's only of labor revenue. You don't give them 33% of revenue, right? So I would just kind of put that as an asterisk next to it so we don't have that limiting belief that like we can't afford it. Because like the percentage actually works decently right now.
Sure.
Okay, so in terms of um the goal being really keeping the guys, that's kind of like the main objective here. What's the current base pay for, say, the entry level guys right now?
All around my landscaping and mowing, the base pay is around $17. Base pay for like some guy we bring off the street that doesn't know what he's doing is about $15 an hour. But collectively, the average is $17 an hour.
Got it. And let's say like a project manager or someone like higher up, are they making more like 20, 25?
Um, our lead techs make about 19.
Okay, so it's pretty close. It's right around that 17 marker. Okay, cool.
Yep.
And then which kind of your target hourly rate per hour? I know it's probably vary across services, but
Yep. So I want to, so we have, it varies, right? So we're changing job cost analysis stuff. Right now, I want to do $100 a man hour for landscaping and around 80 for mowing.
and then as like a very broad stroke, I know right now you kind of want the employees to be able to make more money, the ones that are higher performers, et cetera. The business, is it profitable enough or is it struggling from a financial perspective?
So not for where I want it to be. Like on our current profit and loss, it says like a net 10, net 11. I want it to be like a net 20, net 25.
Yep.
I know that that's possible. I know it's possible, but you also know P&Ls, they have the hidden costs, they have the recurring monthly revenue. Like, so right now, like it'll say net 10, but it actually, if you do all the monthly cost, we're almost like we were broken even for the entire year. Everything else thereafter is now profit.
Got it.
So it's net 10, but there's always those taxes and hidden fees.
Got it. And then this year, 2024, what are you kind of projecting for revenue?
We would like to hit 1.2.
Yeah.
Christmas lights, which by the way, great job, nailed it. I was wondering if you were going to do that. That kind of brings up the rear for us and it really helps us out getting into the winter. Um, so
Around 1.2.
yeah, we're kind of, it would be like a Hail Mary to get there, but
Mm.
I think we'll get there.
Cool. All right. So basically you're going to grow 50% year over year. So having a basically break even is not unheard of when you're growing revenue by $400,000 in a year. $400,000 will typically take almost 80, like between 50 and $100,000 of just CapEx to facilitate that growth. So I'm not concerned about like right now having a zero. When I look at $17 per hour base and I look at 80 to $100 as what you're charging the customer, you're blowing the doors off the 25% rule to be able to make P for P like actually work. And so what that basically means is I want to be able to pay on base pay less than 25% of what I'm charging the customer. So, for example, if you were charging $80 per hour, I don't want to be my base pay to be any greater than $20 per hour to the crew. So you're already beating that like massively. Um, so what have you done in terms of like trying P for P? Because like I think that like the business from a numbers perspective, it would work just fine. What parts are you kind of question marks around that?
To be honest with you, my only question is in moving forward, I'm just scared to see what it's actually going to do to the books. Like I mean, I have a coach BTA and they're like, yo, you can't even roll out P for P right now. And I'm like, that's the number one thing in my business, even though there's all systems and like the most scareful thing for me is like, if I roll this out, what's going to happen week over week? Good, bad, or indifferent. That's the only worry or concern that I have. And now,
What's
like,
what's their reason? What's their reason, John? Did they give a reason? Is it a matter of like you can't afford it?
that's what they say. But if you look at my books, I mean, we can pull it up. Like, if you look at my books, and it's like we're at a net 10 going to a net 11, bumping up into net 12. Like, it's there. So I'm kind of like, why? But I think it's because the system's not really in place in terms of like it's not very strategic. You know, this is written down, which we can have that written down. I have your document from 1 to 2 page document that I got that. Like it's already written. They've already signed it off before. We've rolled it out, rolled it back. We did bonus up last year. I'm sure you're familiar with that software. It just, the concept of like your hour plus a little bit of like, hey, you made $7 a day. Like they don't, that doesn't do anything for them, you
Yep.
know? And, you know, again, I got guys right now, the hurricane came in and they're like, yo, I need to get hours or I'm walking.
Hmm.
And so I truly have really great people that want to see the vision that we have for this local area and blow it up. But I can't do that at just doing maintenance at $17 an hour.
Right. Yeah. Like, so the bottom line is, especially with maintenance, you have a huge amount of incremental savings of labor as soon as you institute P4P, because every time they get in and out of the truck is most of where the savings are at. So any sort of maintenance where they have multiple stops in a day, that's when P4P really impacts it the most. When projects are involved, there's a little bit less of a savings because there's not in and out of the truck, they're not on and off their phones all day long. That being said, they get much more creative with projects when all of a sudden they are getting paid based on the job getting done instead of clocking hours against the job. And so, when you rolled out in the past or attempted, what was the struggle? Why didn't that work?
They weren't just motivated. I don't know, like if it wasn't, hey, showing them the numbers every day, and maybe it wasn't having the reminder constantly when you're reminding a technician, hey, guess what? You could do this every day, but it's like the desire to want to go do that. But it wasn't in their face. This could be possible. Um, I think that's kind of the problem is that it was kind of like out of sight, out of mind. Like you could, but it wasn't like in their face every day about making the money. It was just, I'm just going to be here as a technician to get the job done and collect a paycheck.
Did they ever get on P4P, the app, or not?
I think we got it before the app was like fully,
So there was no
um,
leaderboard and stuff.
no.
Got it. Okay.
But we did like the leaderboard with bonus up, and there was no like, it's not when you walk in, it's glaring, it's in your face, you know.
What was kind of like the highest performers bonus ups on, say, a given pay period? Like $100?
Not even.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so basically I've just seen unless they're making over 200 to $300 per paycheck, it just does not impact their behavior because someone's
Yep.
not going to bust tail all day long for an entire paycheck over an extra couple bucks an hour. They're just not. Like if
Nope.
given the choice, like I'd rather just stay in the truck and have AC. Now, the difference, so for example, at my shop, the first one, our base pays $20 an hour. Guys are making between 25 and $35 an hour. Like they know when they get to work, there is so much urgency to get outside that door and start working. Like no one's lollygagging or talking. And if they do, they're gonna get kicked to the curb. No one wants to work with them because they're going to take them from a 30, 35 all the way down to 15 or like a base pay or $25 an hour. And no one wants that. And so the bottom line is like, as you know, there are people in your organization that are getting paid 19 that make twice as much profit for the business as the person that's making 17. And so you will lose one or two of your guys if you institute pay for performance correctly. The bottom line is the highest performers will absorb all of that work just fine, and now they'll be able to make 26 to $30 an hour. Um, Go ahead.
That's just my concern. You know, we have a budget set now in LMN where they're only supposed to make a certain amount of revenue to clear like 1.2. Based off of our last 7 months going into the eighth month, we're projecting like this much revenue. So my concern is that they'll just blow that off the doors and we can't recoup overhead because they're just
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because if right now we're paying someone 35% of our revenue is going to direct wages, whether they make $30 an hour because they get the job done in half the amount of time, or they make $15 an hour because they hit budgeted hours, I don't care. The job got done. They just did it way faster. So yeah,
true.
it will throw production rates through like all over the place.
Yeah.
right? But I'm thrilled because they're getting more money and they're getting the jobs done faster. And instead of
Sure.
working 45 hours, now they're working 35, but making the same amount.
Gotcha.
And they hate overtime because when they go into overtime, they're not making any extra when they're on P4P.
Got it.
And so I would really, really challenge the idea that going to P4P makes you pay them any more money. You're already paying them 35%.
But that's my point. I don't want to. Like, I don't want to pay them 35. Like right now, our labor is a little bit less this year than it is last year. That's because
Mhm,
our prices increased. But I'm
mhm.
not trying to pay them 33%.
So
Um,
this is what I would do, John. I would probably um run like one crew inside the software, inside of a free trial. Um, run them at 30% or even 28%. I know your prices will warrant this. Like your pricing is differentiated enough between your $17 per hour base and $100 per hour for landscaping. Like you can, so like my shop, for example, I only pay them 25%, but I've raised prices high enough to where now at 20 the base, I'm at $100 per hour to the customer, right? So you can absolutely do it that way. Just change the percentage. But I would just do it on the back end and just track it. Just see what they'd be making. And what I would challenge is the idea that switching to P4P is going to cost you any more. It won't. Because you know it's a fixed percentage. So like
sure,
if
sure.
they crush it and you're like, man, I don't know if I can pay them $30 an hour. You can if they get the job done in half the amount of time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So I want to respect your time. I know our time's up, but my last question is, let's say that, God, I just had it. Like you give them all of, say, 25. Like it's just more of like a commission structure. Because I know you
Yes.
talk. Okay, that's what I thought. Any like last words on like salespeople
In terms of so like
and
how to bonus
percentages?
them or
Yeah,
making sure
yeah.
that they're accurate on their estimates.
To bonus them.
I would do more profit sharing instead of P for P around budgeted hours.
Okay,
So doing it based upon profit. You could also do it based on revenue. So we usually do like a defensive and an offensive measure. So like offense being revenue, defense being profit margin. So basically, if they grow revenue a ton, but we have no profit, they'll not make a bonus.
got it.
This is more important if you're not there. If you're there,
Okay,
you can kind of monitor them a lot better.
sure.
But when you want to get out of the business and have like a general manager, for example, that's when you want to have like a very balanced, profit sharing, revenue growth, and some sort of,
Sure.
balance between the
Sure.
two. Um, but the thing is, what's nice about P4P is when they start using budget, like you guys use budget hours on projects right now.
Correct.
Yeah, so like when they start using budget hours, the crew will keep your estimators honest
For
because
sure.
if they try to cut way back and they go, oh man, we're just gonna like try to get this job. Great. Well, if they cut budgeted hours, the crew will revolt against them.
Sure.
And so there's this always this nice tension between sales and ops, the guys doing the work. And that is sales wants to get the price as low as possible to get the deal, but not so low that they cut budget hours to the point that the crew gets mad at them.
Got it.
And so right now, no one cares because they just want to clock as many hours in the job. And so I would really, really challenge, like, based on your numbers, I know you can afford to switch to P4P. And if that means doing 25 or 30% instead of 30%, that's fine. Your numbers warrant that. And I really believe if you ran the numbers in the background, some of these guys could be making 24 or 25, and others are probably at $12 an hour in terms of what they'd be earning on P4P.
So what about the, like, for example, we just had a $6,000 landscape job that they finished in roughly a day. So same percentage, same everything,
So
25
at
across.
so out of the 6,000, right? How much of that was actually labor revenue?
I don't have to go back.
That's so like when you look at an estimate, right? You obviously have your materials and which you usually mark up, then you have your equipment, you might mark that with estimate fees, dump fees, etc. I'm only looking at budget hours multiplied by the rate I'm charging the customer. So if you're charging $100 per hour on landscaping, do you know how many budget hours were on that job?
30 or let's just say 50. 50 is a close. Yep.
So 50, that means $5,000. Let's just do the math. So $5,000 of labor revenue. How many guys were on the job?
Five
So there's five guys on the job. And how long do they work for that day? Like a 10-hour day, 12-hour day?
an hour a day.
10 hours. Great. So they hit budget hours exactly on the head. 10 guys or 10 hours multiplied by 5 guys, that's 50 budgeted hours, right? So then it's just a matter of, okay, well, at $100, or sorry, $5,000 in labor, let's assume we give them 20%. We're going to do 20% on P for P. That means $1,000 is going to go to wages. Divided by 5, that's $200 per person, right? So in this case, they would make $20 an hour, quote unquote, on P for P. I would challenge the fact that we can actually afford 25%. And now all of a sudden, instead of $1,000 of labor revenue, there's 1,250, and they're making $250 per person. And now they're making $25 an hour, which they deserve because, to your point, they knocked this out in one day.
Yeah, it was good.
And so I would bet that they would, this is the thing. They got done in 10 hours. I bet they get done in 8 or 9 if they were on P for P.
Valid.
And so when they know that they're getting $250 for this job, no matter what, things change. But explaining that to them is important. Like if you're just like, oh, you guys get a percentage, and especially if you've been back and forth, you did the bonus thing and no one really bid at it, explaining this crew in a very succinct way is important. And it's simply this. Hey guys, some of you work like crazy hard, and other people, you work with, they're not really pushing it. And you guys are all working together. And so everyone can, like, people can kind of fall through the cracks. I want to be able to pay our highest performers way more money. I don't think it's fair that someone gets paid 17 bucks an hour and someone else gets paid 19 bucks an hour, and 19 bucks an hour guy generates twice as much profit for the business. I don't think that's fair. They all in their mind think they're high performers and they're going to identify with this guy. And so you say, look, what we're going to do is we're going to just give a percentage of labor revenue that you earn for the business, you get. Not revenue, labor revenue. And so now it's going to force you to be able to say, hey, we charge $100 per hour. So when you see 50 budget hours, we're charging the customer $5,000 for that labor. You're going to get 25% of that.
So I think what was really difficult in Bonus Up is actually inputting budgeted hours, COGS, let's just call it COGS for my knowledge, and then your labor hours, labor revenue. I haven't seen the software. I mean, it's probably in a year or 2 years from now or ago. Is that clearly
Yeah, I'll show you here real quick.
okay?
So, and don't worry about time. We don't have a call after this, so I don't mind taking some time. I gotta get you convinced, bro. All right, let's see here. 30.
I mean, listen, I was talking to my people. I'm like, if there's one person that can do this in this, Mike, I been following you since I started, man.
I appreciate it. All right, so this is inside the software. So if you're doing say a project, right? So we'll do projects first. So all you're gonna do is create a project. You're like, okay, this is Bill Smith, or now it's nil. Okay, Bill Smith. We're doing a rock install. There are 50 budgeted hours, and we're charging 100 per rate. There's your $5,000. I'm going to go ahead and submit that. It becomes an active project, but then on their time cards, I just assign them to this job for the day.
And now I'm assuming the only place that you really integrate with this software, I mean, just correct me, is Copilot. Is that correct?
It is, and mostly the advantage for the integration there is really on the recurring side, because then the crew can see how much money they're supposed to be making based upon what's on their schedule for the day, and then as they finish the jobs, it kind of like shows them how much they're making, which is a huge incentive on maintenance. For
Sure.
projects, there's not a whole lot there, but yeah, Copilot's the only one to integrate with, but literally it will take you a minute a day to make time cards. So, for example, like if you're in time cards here, even if you do this completely manually and the guys didn't clock in on the app, it literally still, it's like we've kind of done like over the course of a few years. At first, everything was manual. Like literally, we would punch in and outs from Service Autopilot, and then we'd go into here and just make the time card, right? So if we go back, let me just make a fake one. No, can't do that.
That was the other miserable piece, is trying to like do all of this by hand and Bonus Up. It was miserable.
Yeah. So what you can do though is if they have the app, like if you start, okay, we're gonna do if you eventually get to where you have the confidence in P4P and they clock in and out on the app, then the time card gets made automatically. So then
Sure.
you just be at the end of the day, all you really need to put is this information at the bottom: the hourly rate, how many budget hours they completed, the number of the crew, and then it'll figure out the labor revenue automatically, and then like that's it. That's all you have to do each day. Now, if they were on a project, let me see if I can find someone on a project. No one was on a project. All right, let's go back to a different day. So if someone's assigned to a project, you don't even have to put in all that information because you've already done that in the project side. You literally just assign them to this job. Again, that project we created in the other tab. So
Now,
you
just
create your big, go ahead.
can you separate the percentages from projects from maintenance?
Correct. Yes. So you have additional rates. So basically, you add here, you can say, I want to add an additional rate. So if you said, okay, I'm going to be giving 30% on maintenance, 20% on projects, you can just add it in from here.
Okay.
So, like, really, the thing that a lot of times is with the software side, people get confused with is like, oh man, like it's a lot. It's like, look, every day you're simply going to take their time card, and if they're on a maintenance route, you're going to put in their rate, their budget hours, and how many people in the crew. That's it. If they're on a project, you're going to create the project at the beginning, and then you're going to assign them to that project on each time card for each day they're there. That's it. At the end of the pay period, we're simply just calculating, okay, what's their base pay plus overtime versus how much they made on P for P. And we're going to pay them the higher of the two,
Yep.
right? And so as long as you can spend literally between 1 to 2 minutes per employee per day and do their time card, at the end of the pay period, it's pretty straightforward. So like
Copy.
I'll show you this one. So we do bi-weekly pay periods. So let me just go back to last month. So like, okay, this is my Bellingham shop. Let's see what they got here. Okay. So assuming, do you do bi-weekly or weekly?
Weekly.
Okay, so this is bi-weekly, but you can see here the number of regular hours, not too much overtime, but a little bit. About $6,000 of paid out in bonuses. And then you can see here is like when you run payroll, all you'd be doing is their regular hours multiplied by base pay equals their base pay plus overtime. Well, now I'm comparing these two numbers. Which one's higher, base pay or P for P? In this case, it's P for P, and it's this much higher. So they're gonna make this $295 bonus on this paycheck.
So let me just, so this is a really great piece of where I'm getting kind of hung up is, all right, so you see regular hours here. They're obviously not hitting 40 hours. So the difference between what they would have made on hourly between the 40 hours, so let's just say it's 12. From my understanding, you would have been closer to paying them $853 regardless. If he actually took,
Exactly. They just went faster.
yeah,
And no one complains when they work 30 hours in a week and make as much as they would have at 40. No one.
got it. Got
Right?
it.
Like you can just go down the list. Like this guy's made $900 on a pay period. He's working
That
30 hours a week.
dude, that guy down there got 2,000. I mean, he has to be a manager or something.
No, he's base pay is 20, revenue is 33%.
That's incredible. My guys would be chomping at the bit for this. Dear Lord.
So it's just a matter of running the numbers. And so, for example, this is right before we recently switched from 33% to 25%. Why? Because we raised prices and we realized everyone's making a killing and we can bring it down to 25% and they're all still very happy.
Okay,
Like they
so
don't
and
need to
this
making 36 an hour. They'll be happy to make 30.
so this is still the same. So if I go, I mean, Christmas lights must be different. I'm assuming aeration or receding season is the same because it's labor.
Yep. So what you always want to figure out is simply it's labor revenue. So on
Gotcha.
those other services, you just got to figure out what percentage of that is considered labor revenue. So for what we do, so it's like across the board for all treatments, applications, Christmas lights, snow plowing, all those other services that are not maintenance and landscaping that we do all the time, we
Totally.
simply assume that 50% of that revenue is not labor revenue. It's the cost of the seed, it's the cost of the fertilizer, it's the cost of all this other stuff, the lights. And so then on a two budgeted hour job, right? Instead of it being $200, that is a $400 job, but 200 of it's not considered labor revenue. Make sense?
Well, if it's two, okay, it's because it's two budgeted hours. Okay,
Exactly.
yes. So
So
then the rest of it
typically that would be like, oh, that's $200 to the customer. Well, no, it's a $400 job, but we're assuming half of it is labor
is
revenue.
labor. Got it. Is labor.
Yep.
Got it. Okay. Understood. So basically, if when you plug that stuff in and it says, hey, budgeted hours, how much you charge to the client, you need to know how much you charge the client. So if I
Yes.
charge
In
maintenance is
this
80,
case,
landscapes
yep.
100, lights is 120.
Because everything is just ran by budgeted hours. So, for example, our crew is still going to see two budget hours on that job. because the labor revenue assigned to that job is only $200,
Okay.
right? The same way on your $6,000 project, 5,000 is considered the labor revenue.
Got
So
it.
they get 50 budgeted hours.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Got it. Got it. Okay. I'm tracking. I'm tracking. That's easy.
Yep. So
That's easy.
you're already doing a lot of the hard lifting as you use budget hours. You have hourly rates. Um, and then the beautiful part about this is if you use the system, you start getting efficiency scores on every employee because
Yeah.
efficiency score is budget hours divided by clocked hours. And having that number will delineate who is the high performers and who's the low performers.
Well, let me ask you this. So let's say you and at your location up other side of the US, do you give them, let's say like, that's a crew of two. Do you give them split between 25% or do you give like 13 and 12
Yep.
for
So
lead?
basically what happens on a time card here, I'll show you. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. So here in a time card, if I do two, it
Yep.
splits the number of budgeted hours.
Yeah.
So automatically. So in your example, if someone makes $100 of labor revenue,
Yep.
they're both going to make $12.50 because if assuming 25% is the rule.
Yeah. So I'm mentioning like, so we have a crew lead here makes about 18 to $19 an hour. And then our crew member makes like 15, 16. So would you split that 12-5 to say crew lead gets 13, crew member gets 12? What's the thoughts?
Totally up to you. So
Okay.
we
Okay.
have it a flat across the board,
Sure.
because in our opinion, it's like if you're gonna be more experienced and be better, you will earn more money.
Yep.
That being said, when you have an actual crew leader, like a driver, and then other people are not drivers, what you can do is you can say, okay, if you're not a driver, or you can tie it to even tenor or skill or whatever you want to do, or even certification, some people do, and then they can step up their percentages. So you're like, hey, you start at 20, you can work yourself all the way up to 30% based upon these criteria, right? And if you just want to make it binary, you can say, okay, you get 20% if you are a non-driver, you get 30% or 25% or whatever if you drive the truck or you're a lead, for example.
Okay. Then do you add like bonuses? Let's say, reviews,
Yep.
whatever.
So that's all through your manual adjustments. So
Okay.
manual adjustments can either be positive or negative. It's
Mhm.
also going to account for things like equipment maintenance because on equipment maintenance, they're clocked in,
Yep. Yep.
but they're not making any labor revenue. So
Sure.
if you think about from the example of like P for P is going up as you make revenue, base pay and overtime is going up as well. And then at the end, we just pay the higher of the two. Well, in the case of doing equipment maintenance, base pay is going up, but labor revenue or P for P is not. So we need to manually adjust this so they're not penalized for doing the equipment maintenance. So then you just be making a manual adjustment to either P for P, or if you want to do like a bonus, I would actually be technically manually adjusting both of them because I want to ensure they get the money even if they hit base pay. So when you make a
Okay.
manual adjustment in here, it's going to ask you like, are you doing this to P for P or are you doing this to payroll bonus? In other words, guaranteed in the bonus reports. Versus P for P, they might get a P for P, manual adjustment, but if they just stink the rest of the week, they're not actually going to see that money.
Got it.
So equipment maintenance, I'd be adjusting just the P for P because they're clocked in. The base pay is still going up. I just need to manually adjust P for P. In the
Yeah.
case
Yeah.
if I want to give a $50 bonus to a new customer referral type situation, I'm going to do a payroll bonus because that's going to get tacked on no matter what for
Got
the
it.
paycheck.
Got it. No matter what they do. Got it.
Yep.
Got it. Cool. And can you set like deductions? Like, hey, you're late for the third time at 10 minutes, whatever.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
there you
you have the mark late. And then also, if they don't show up, what you can do inside of each user, it keeps track of all of their call outs, etc. Boom. Marked dates. So if let's say they were late, you would have been able to check it from the time card. But let's say they didn't clock in, so therefore you have no time card. You can just go in here and do like, oh, they were a no-show or a call out. And then at the end of the quarter, for example, if you're doing profit sharing, it's tied to this. You can just come into their user account and see all of their marked dates for that period of time. Cool. So if I was you, John, what I would recommend is like do one crew, just run the numbers in the background on a trial, use a different email so you get another trial month, run one crew and just see what they'd be making and then play with the percentages. So
go.
even if you're like, hey, I don't think I can afford the 33%. Okay, great. Let's start at 25. If they were making 25%, what would they be making now? This is the thing. When people do this, and they don't tell their crew, they come back and like, well, there's not really much incentive. It's right around that they're going to be making the same amount. Here's the problem. They're not actually incentivized yet on P4P. You haven't
Sure.
actually told them if you work faster, you will make more money. And so we typically see a 25 to 30% increase in efficiency when you actually tell them. So
Yeah.
if they can be making 17, 18 bucks an hour on P4P when you're running on the background, just know that they're probably going to make 23 to $24 an hour if you actually institute the system. And if you're like, well, I can't afford it. No, it's costing you the exact same amount. They'll just get the jobs done faster.
So
And
how
what
do you
this
roll that
means,
out? Let's say that you do it at 25% and they're really not making money yet. Then say, hey, guess what? I'm running P4P. Now let's track you.
yep. So inside of P4P University, there's a video on the exact process for rollout. So the first one is what I just told you, which is run the numbers in the background without telling anyone, and expect them to be about the same. Like you're like, there's not much bonus here. Then what you're gonna do is for 2 pay periods, I would probably do 3 or 4 since you're weekly. You're just gonna tell them, hey, there's this P4P thing. Do very basic. You make a percentage of all the revenue you make for the business. It's 25% if you are a non-driver, it's 28% or whatever if you are a driver. I'm going to be tracking that on the back end. You guys don't have to worry about anything. Just know the faster you work, the more money you're going to make. And then what you're going to do at the end of each pay period, you're going to tell them, hey, I will give you the higher of either your base, what you're currently making, or P for P.
So let's just would you recommend rolling this out like as a consistent base? Let's say, hey guys, you're either going to have two options. A, you're going to go with like commission. They'll understand that. Hey, commission or your base pay. Like you're not going to choose the two. So what I mean by that is if one person chooses to do P for P, but they actually make $19 an hour, their base is going to go down.
Yep.
So instead of
You do
making
not want to have
19,
a split. You do not want to have a split because you're
right.
gonna have two different cultures evolve.
Yep.
These
Yep.
guys are motivated to push and haul. These guys slow them down.
Ah, valid,
So
valid,
either
valid.
either A, either A, you have split base pays, which I'm not a fan of, but assuming you have some sort of way to delineate the difference between a 17 and a 19, okay,
Mm,
fine, that's fair. I like having a set, which means the 19s are going to have a little bit of a drop. Those are the ones that you're going to have to convince the most, but they're also likely the ones that will make the most on P4P.
yeah,
And so
they
what you
will.
do is you do this pay period thing. Say, hey guys, we're going to do $17 per hour base. You can even go lower. I think you might be able to get with 16. You can book another call once you've done a couple weeks of testing if you like. But like I would probably go with like 16. It's going to be a bit of a drop. But what you do
Yeah,
is you tell them, hey, we're going to do an entire month, 4 pay periods, where you guys get to choose. Do you want P for P or do you want what you're currently making?
sure.
So there's no downside for them whatsoever. And then
Okay.
what you do is you just pick the best performer each day and show how much they made from the software. Just screenshot it and send it on like your chat of like, so and so made an extra 50 bucks a day. So and so made an extra $100 a day. And you start showing that it's actually real. And then at the end of the pay period, you just literally show both of them. Like, which one do you want?
Yeah.
And if you're doing it right, most of them will have all 4 pay periods where they chose P for P. And then you just say, at the end of this month, we're going to vote on which one we want to go with.
Yeah. So let me ask you, this is a very serious question in terms of how we begin to transition between like full throttle. I wish I was 100% residential. I'm not. So commercial like crushes us. So we have two commercial days. One of them is full commercial, one of them is split commercial residential. So my problem is how do you take a yearly contract? I'm assuming what you would probably do is what you would have charged them per visit is what should go to them at that point instead of, hey, I get $2,350 per this pay period. Let me split it up into four. Rather, you would say, hey, it actually cost me $835 to do this one mow. Then your residential mows together.
Yeah, like so I'm not sure how you set up contracts in LMN, but do you set up a whole bunch of different visits with assigned budget hours for each?
So we just like rolled into LMN, so we haven't even got that far. Um,
Okay.
yes, they're
Because
long story.
yeah, basically how it works. So like I'll use the verbiage of Copilot. I think it's pretty similar in Element. It's basically like, hey, I'm charging the customer the same amount every single month, but
Yes.
the scope of work changes dramatically. Like if I show up today and I'm just mowing, great. In next week, I'm doing a leaf cleanup. It's going to take me 5 times as long. So you can't be paying the guys the same amount of money, i.e., you can't have the same amount of budget hours on every single visit.
Got
And
it.
so
Okay.
really what it comes down to is having budget hours assigned correctly to each visit and each service inside the contract. And this is likely how you built the estimate. Like you
Yes.
probably said, hey, we're gonna have 30 visits of mowing and because it's 8 hours per.
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So I just don't know how it's set up exactly in Elman. Like
Sure.
for
Sure.
us, we have budget hours assigned to every visit. You literally build all these visits, and then you just have it underneath a contract where you're paying a set amount per month to the customer. But internally, we see these as separate visits. So when the crew shows up, they only see the mowing this week, but next week they're going to see mowing and the leaf cleanup, and
Got
we
it.
schedule them all differently. I just don't know enough about LMN. That is going to be a little more tricky if you're not doing budget hours assigned to every visit right now. Like when the crew shows up right now, do they see the entire scope of work or just what they're supposed to do for the day?
Just a lawn mowing line item.
And does it have a certain amount of budget hours?
It does. When I first bid this, I've had this for 3 years. When I first bid it, I
Perfect.
was like,
Yep.
yes.
Yeah. Hey, as long as you have budget hours, that's all that matters. Because
Got it.
now, at least now we'll have a benchmark of how long it should take, and the guys
Okay.
will tell you if it's incorrect.
Okay.
Like with P4P, your crew keeps you honest on pricing. Because
For
if your
sure.
pricing is off, they'll be like, "Hey, boss, I crush it, and then this one day on commercial, I'm losing my shirt on P4P."
Yeah. So, and here's the reality and the honesty of my Monday. My Monday is $2,100 for 35 budgeted hours. There's there's no way they're going to get a bonus on Mondays. Zero chance.
Mhm.
It's just
So
not.
then, so then this is what you can do. You can say, "Hey, we're going to artificially increase budgeted hours on these jobs." And then we're going to do that to make sure I don't penalize you all for the fact that I underbid this job. Because increasing budget hours only affects how much they get paid. It doesn't affect the contract value. And so if you want to save face with them on P4P, I would increase their budget hours. Hey, we're going to do this until we can raise prices to actually warrant that number of budgeted hours. Because remember, we calculate how much they're getting paid based on budget hours multiplied by the rate. That equals labor revenue. In this case, usually how much we actually charge the customer would be the equal of those two. In this case, you're going to artificially increase budget hours so that it's more labor revenue assigned to them.
Okay. Yeah.
Cool. Well, hey, best of luck. Do the first part. And then I'd really recommend there's in P4P, there's a video of me going through the rollout process. And then at the end, everyone votes. And usually when that happens, you're gonna have one or two people vote against it. Those are usually your lowest performers. You roll the thing out, they'll leave, and everyone will pick up their hours.
Okay. So, getting on the trial, how would I go about doing that?
Just use a different email than you did in the past. Go through p4psoftware.com, sign up. You should be good. Because the first 90 days, the first 30 days are free.
Okay, because I didn't see that on there. Or you just kind of go through log on and go through that process.
Yeah, you basically have to, you get signed up, but then you don't get charged for 30 days. So if you want to cancel, just cancel before the end of 30 days and you'll be good.
Awesome. I
All right,
cannot
dude.
wait to tell my wife that I spoke with Mike Andes today.
Best of luck. You want me to send you a recording? She can watch it. You can convince her.
Oh, heck yeah.
Cool.
She's
Leal, could you
gonna be
send
like,
it to him
what?
after?
Yeah,
Cool.
dude,
Awesome.
thanks so
Thanks,
much.
John. Best
Yeah,
of luck
man.
to you, man. You'll kill
Take care,
it.
brother.
Good
All right,
luck.
man.
Bye.